Hi everyone, and welcome to the latest round of IronQuest feedback. This week or month, we're going to be covering the IronQuest Re-Viz-It round. So this is where we encourage people to go away and have a look at visualizations they created previously, or have a look at visualizations that are published in the Tableau Accelerators gallery, and then either reimagine them or recreate them or just make them better. The reason we came up with this idea is because we recognize that some people perhaps have been using Tableau for a while, and often with people's Tableau public profiles, you look at the very early vizzes and then you compare them to the more recent vizzes, and you can really see how people's skills have progressed. And we wanted a way of people, or give people opportunity really to go back and have a look at their earlier work and just reimagine it and using the skills they now know to improve upon it and consider how they might do it differently now they have strengthened their skills more and have more experience in the tool. And then with the accelerators, I think everyone recognizes that some of them could be better. And there's been a trend recently in the community around people going away and actually reimagining them. So people like Autumn Batani, for instance, have done a lot of vizzes which have reimagined some of the accelerators. So we thought we'd incorporate that into this challenge as well to give people an opportunity to go away and reimagine some of those. So we have entries that cover both like previous vizzes and also the accelerator vizzes as well. And you'll see those, they'll be more like business dashboard focused. But I'm honored to be joined by CJ Mays today. So CJ is a recently named Tableau Visionary. He's a Tableau Public Ambassador as well. And he's also just been named as a finalist in the Iron Viz competition. Welcome, CJ.
Thanks for having me, Sarah. And it's nice that my titles list is slowly growing.
I was about to say that your accolades are getting longer and longer. Yeah, really excited for you to be in the Iron Viz final. And it's quite apt that you're here today on the IronQuest call, because I'm sure people will want to hear from you and for you to share some of your tips and tricks and secrets and that kind of thing.
Amazing. Well, we'll see how we get on. But yeah, I'm super excited for the Iron Viz final with great company.
Yes.
Well, yeah. Yes, stoked to be here, and thanks for inviting me along.
Yeah, thank you. And I will say as well, a couple of things that relate to Iron Viz is Will and Kimley both participate in IronQuest pretty regularly, which is great. So congratulations, Will and Kimley, and you as well, CJ. But also everyone that made it to the final was part of the feedback initiative. And obviously, CJ, you kind of did two roles on that. So you were a participant and also you helped provide feedback as well. So really appreciate you helping out, but also it was great to see some of the people we spoke to actually made it through as well.
Yeah, it was fantastic to be able to play a part in it, but the feedback was so invaluable, as well as it actually connects you with different members of the community. So I was extremely grateful to have the chance to be able to sit down and hear what people say. It's funny because a couple of people complimented the color palette used, and I would only use that color palette once Emily told me that my colors were not very accessible friendly to start with. So thank you.
Yeah, and I would say as well, it was one thing I really enjoyed about the feedback initiative was actually hearing people talk through their viz and kind of explain the story behind it and the reason why they design things in a certain way. And you just don't get that with when you just view someone's viz on Tableau Public, for instance. But I can't say that the feedback initiative was the reason that everyone made it to the final, but because I think all three of you came with very, very great like vizzes that were all pretty much complete by the time we saw them. But it was great to be part of it nonetheless.
Correlation or causation, who knows?
But anyway, let's get started and have a look at some of the vizzes that we're going to review today. So what we're going to do today is actually review the original viz where people have one, and then we'll look at the IronQuest submission as well. So for Aakarsh, this was the viz that he decided to kind of reimagine for the Re-Viz-It challenge. This viz, if I look down at the bottom, was first published in September last year, and it was for a Make of a Monday submission. So we can see here he's looking at what is your personal information worth? So essentially how personal information gets sold on the black market and how much it's sold for. So we've got 4 pretty basic charts here. And then if I go over here to, this is the reimagined version. So it's completely different to the original. And I think I'd say that Aakarsh probably used it as an opportunity to try out some new chart types. So we have it, is this a dendrogram? Is that right?
That's what I would have called it.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, on first glance, it's quite, you know, visually like impactful. I think, you know, this chart type tends to grab people's attention. And there is another view, and I'll go to that in a second. But on first glance, I'd say I like the fact he's given an introduction to the topic at the top, and then everything is like clearly labeled. I think the colors work pretty well. It's quite clear to read everything. Have you got any thoughts?
Yeah, for sure. I agree with the context around the intro paragraph. It sets the scene nicely for those that might not necessarily know what the dark web is. I think this chart type's kind of testament to Aakarsh's development over the past year or so, and the ability to experiment with advanced chart types is a really exciting thing, that I think anyway. Then on top of that, if you switch the view,
yeah, I was going to go through this one first, but we can do that.
I just want to.
You're getting excited about this other view.
To stay on the theme of advanced chart type, again, you can't necessarily create this chart on the left by using anything on the Show Me tab. I guess it's either approached by radial calculations, or he's done it using multiple barbell kind of calculations. But either way, really exciting and testament to Aakarsh's development. And I love the interactivity between clicking one of the icons and how it filters the table.
Yeah, absolutely. If I go back to the beginning.
Yeah, sorry for jumping the gun.
No, it's fine. We had to show the other chart. My first question, and this is some of these feedback points that are based around like storytelling. So if you think of the Iron Viz feedback, Iron Viz criteria and the kind of things that the judges would typically be looking for, there's a comment in the intro around how the number of cyber attacks has increased in the last couple of years. I'd love to see some data behind that. So maybe just a very basic chart that shows how that trend is on the up. I think that would be good just for additional context. And then with these charts, and this applies across both of the views, it would be good to add in some additional kind of storytelling. So whether that's annotations or just some text around what's being shown to explain the data essentially. So we can see here that forged documents are the most commonly, sorry, I want to say most commonly sold, but they're maybe just the most expensive item on the dark web. So it'd be good to kind of explain that a little bit more, why that might be, and just talk about the data and what exactly is being presented to the viewer.
My slight concern with not necessarily the way it's been built, but the chart type itself is the comparative lengths of bar charts. So you'll see that in the first, I guess, node section of the bars, you've got 26,000, and relative to the top of the next chart, they've given it kind of equal measure. You have 6,500. But if we take that 6,500 as the top one, but then say click on, if you go down to forged document scans and click into that one. Yeah, just on the it pops out the ones for this section, and again it's I'm presuming doing a window max of that section filter, whereas perhaps it's a little bit misleading because you want to do either a window max of everything.
Yeah, no, I see what you mean. So you've got a very small bar here, and then longer bars here, but those values are actually less.
just a thought. I guess you can't necessarily compare two at one time. So
yeah. Another thing I would say is make the fonts larger. So like particularly the labels here are very small. It's quite difficult to read them. So I'd consider making those a little bit bigger. And on the to change view, like slider or toggle, whatever you want to call it, it will be good to explain what we're changing to. So like what's behind that slider, because all we get is to change view. So I'd like to understand, you know, what else is there for someone to explore. Did you have any other feedback on this chart before I go on to the second one?
No, I think nice job overall. There's, for those that are looking at it and wanting to create them their own, there's one on the Viz-It Handy and one on Tableau Magic that I've looked at recently myself. I thought both were good tutorials. Okay,
cool. Maybe you can share the links and we can put them in the video link at the end.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, cool. I can always rely on you to do that, CJ. When we did this last, you were sharing out like loads of links for like sports data, which is really helpful. And so with this viz, yeah, I agree with what you said before about, you know, there's been an advanced chart type. That's really impressive that, you know, Aakarsh has been able to do this. I would consider adding a how to read or how to use section. So just to explain what is going on in this chart, because if we hover over them, so we have a kind of like a node for each kind of like type of, I guess it's, I want to say like type of data or thing for sale, and then that's broken down more by individual like components of that type. All of these nodes of size is actually the same, they're all colored the same way, so perhaps I would consider either sizing them or coloring them by the value, so we could see easily like which node accounts for the highest value at a glance.
Yeah, totally agree. Pre-attentive attributes would really bring this chart to life, especially if you put it in relation to the table. So what I would do, and really minor things, but it'll elevate the viz, is maybe use the icon that you have on the left in the chart and pop it in the title at the top.
Over here, by like hack services.
So then it's just tying that together. Then, as you said, use some of the sizing for each of the different nodes. Maybe grey out the remaining nodes that aren't being looked at, and then perhaps highlight the maximum of each section. So say if we click into the fake in the middle, fake whatever that is.
Fake documents.
Then we see the passport at the top. But how can I associate that table with the chart? It's hard to draw the two together, but I think you've got some nice filtering functionality at the moment that can be built on.
Yeah, I found this data really interesting, particularly for the forged documents, because we have a few random like countries, and then it goes down to like US state level IDs. Which I mean, it's something special about the Indiana ID. I don't know. But yeah, I just thought that was interesting. I would consider showing this right-hand section as a bar chart or another chart, just to make it more visual rather than just showing it as a table. And another thing I would consider is just the use of color, because we do have quite a few colors going on this view. So you've got the blue, the white, pink, another shade of blue, green. So I'd perhaps just limit the number of colors that are in use. Yeah, the one final thing I'd say is what do you want people to take away from this viz? Is it that you want to kind of tell them how they can stay safe, or make sure their information doesn't end up on the dark web? But whatever it is, maybe you could provide like a takeaway like section where there's some links on resources you could go and read if you wanted to learn more about this topic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you'll see that those sorts of thoughts also came apparent when giving the feedback in the actual Iron Viz as well.
Yeah, during our initiative, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so one thing I'd say, and it's probably going to apply to every single viz we look at today, but what do you want the reader to take away? And just bear that in mind when you're designing vizzes.
Cool.
All right, so moving on, the next viz we have is by Alisha. So I'll start off by looking at Alisha's initial viz. So this one is called Exploring the Changing Forests. And then if I look down at the dates, this was done in November 2020. So we have some information here on how the forests are being lost to like burning, just deforestation and that kind of thing. And then I'm going to go over to the new viz, which is here. So it's using the same data set but presented in a slightly different way. So we have the overall kind of loss over time and then a breakdown by country, and this is interactive, and then looking at the data by region as well, and then comparing how the tree loss compares to global temperatures. So on the whole, I'd say this is a very clean viz, very simple use of color, lots of white space, and really looks great from that perspective.
I think the layout is complementary to helping understand the different sections compared to the previous viz. And I quite enjoy the longer form of it. The environmental color palette is a lot softer, which is nice. I called it minimalistic on Twitter. Alisha said that she was running out of ideas, but I think minimalistic is a much nicer phrase. You've considered the alignment really well, and it's, I don't know about you, but these kind of three line charts, with how minimalistic they are, kind of the raggedness kind of feels like a twig or a carving kind of thing. So I actually really enjoy it.
I didn't see it like that, but yeah, no, I can see what you mean.
Yeah, with no grid lines or zero lines, just one full number to call out the peak is, I thought it was actually quite nice. Yeah,
I mean the whole thing's nice. I think in terms of the design, it looks great. I was, in terms of like feedback, there was a couple of things I was going to suggest. So we have the radio buttons up here that allow you to change what's been shown in this section. So if I change this to forest loss, you'll see that this should update. There you go. I would considering this section doesn't update, so it's always got the 3 kind of metrics on there, I'd consider moving this down. So it's like maybe somewhere here above that chart. So it's closer to the area that you'd expect to filter. And then I would also maybe add this in an information button or something, but actually explain these metrics. I'm no expert in deforestation or whatever you'd call this, but it'd be good just to understand, how these are calculated and exactly what they are. I have a few other things, but CJ, I'll let you go because we might say the same thing.
Yeah, okay. On the parameter thing that you noted, I think also if you change the parameter and scroll to the bottom viz, I think the text doesn't update, right? So if you scroll to the bottom.
It does update, burned area.
No, we can see that as global temperatures are increasing, so too is forest loss and tree cover. So the original had forest
loss, yeah.
Yeah, so it was on forest loss, but then the final chart's global temperature.
Yeah, okay.
So I would have that as a sheet that perhaps updates based on what chart is showing. Or if you want to use that as your conclusion, maybe have some alternative text there and then have a concluding comment at the bottom for what you want people to know about the relationship between burnt areas, global temperatures, and forest loss, that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, that's a good shout. On this chart, on the map, I was initially going to say it could be quite difficult to find smaller countries just due to the limitations of maps in general, because Alicia's are saying use the map to filter for a particular country. But then I saw there's a filter here where you can actually select a country, and I kind of missed that initially. So I'd consider moving that up. So either up here somewhere or near the actual country name, just so it's closer to where your user would be reading, like what action they should take. And I was also going to suggest in this chart, we have a breakdown by region. It's very wide. So I was considering two things, that maybe you could create a narrower bar chart and then have a space to the right, which will then break each region down by maybe the top 5 or top 10 countries within that region. And that would only show when you made a selection on a particular region. Or you could make this a bit smaller and include that in the tooltip or something. But I thought that would be interesting, just to provide that extra level of detail.
Yeah, that's a really nice suggestion. I also had made a small note on the length of the bar. I think it's done for alignment reasons, so I do understand Alicia's thoughts behind it, but perhaps it takes up too much space on the page. So yeah, my thought process behind it was perhaps reduce it to about half the size, and then either have a pop out of the countries within the sub-region or have some text. Also with this, simply because I happen to have used the same bar chart style in Iron Viz, is you can label the end of the maximum. So you can label the end of the grey line to have them all nicely aligned with a number at the end. And I think that would suit this bar chart quite nicely, because at the moment you have to hover to see the burnt area for each region.
Yeah, it's a good shout. I actually have a blog post on this chart type.
I know, it's the one I use.
One of the few things I have a blog post on. So I'll put it in the notes at the end of the video. Thanks for that plug. But no, this great work, Alisha. This looks really good. All right, so moving on, we have a viz by Chimdi that looks at US car insurance rates. This is the initial viz that Chimdi did back, I think, in 2020. Yeah, so this was a Make of a Monday. And I actually remember this viz when he published it. And I think this was around the time that Chimdi was kind of on his rise. Like every week he'd come out with an amazing viz for Make of a Monday. And it really inspired me, and actually inspired the design that I did for the same data set. So I just really love this kind of like ranked view that Chimdi did, and the interactivity as well. But he's improved it still. So if we go across to the new version, it's got Chimdi's new style kind of like all over it. Yeah, I mean, it looks great.
You
and
we have it by him, can't you?
Yeah, he has such a distinctive style. It's funny, I was going through his Tableau Public portfolio today looking for the old viz, and it was just, it really like hit home, like how distinctive his style is, and how it's very easily identifiable as him. But yeah, I think it looks great. So with this viz is actually composed of 2 views as well. So we have this initial kind of map view, and then there's a whole nother dashboard in here as well. So I'll start off on the first one. I mean, it looks, I don't have much negative feedback to, well, not negative, but like constructive feedback to share. I think it looks great. It's easy to read. The colors are really nice. You've got a how to read section. One thing I would say is I got a little bit confused about some of the colors. I think there's colors that, and maybe I've interpreted it wrong, but I think some of the colors have multiple meanings. And what confused me was we have this chart on the right, sorry, on the left over here, which has got states above or below the US average for the price of car insurance. So anything that's above average is shaded in like a yellowy orange. But then on the middle chart here, we're using a different color palette, but that we're also using that similar shade of say orange. And so we had Louisiana shaded in orange here, but that means that Louisiana, I think, is expensive full range car insurance, like judging by this chart here, or does it mean something else? I got a little bit confused.
Yeah, understandably on the color palettes, it's a lot of purple, isn't it? A lot of shades of purple, and it's
Yeah,
hard to necessarily navigate between them for this. So
yeah.
that's a really good call out.
And so
Cool.
go ahead. Oh, I was going to say, sorry, that I thought I was looking at these two charts on the left, looking at both of them as looking at the value of the car insurance versus the US average. So one thing I would like to know is what is the US average before looking at these charts. And also I was thinking maybe there was a way of combining them into one, because typically your flow would be look at the first chart, identify if a state's above or below, and then look at the second chart to see how much it's above or below. So rather than showing that as two separate maps, could that be combined into one?
Yeah, good thinking. Yeah, I like that. Just to go off on a complete tangent to your suggestions, kind of want to take it back to the kind of the starting commentary, and I think Chimdi is one of those that many admire in the community for design. So I want to change the narrative to the design aspect, if that's okay for a couple minutes.
Go for it, yeah.
What you'll see with Chimdi's work is a fantastic layout in terms of the grid, and I won't ask Sarah for you to change to the other slide just yet of his work, but you'll notice that the corners and the framing of the viz will apply on both slides. So it feels like a smooth transition between the dashboards. Again, from a design perspective, you'll notice how Chimdi grays out slightly some of the other words on the page. And that's because, albeit they're important for reference or numbers or keys, it's not where he wants to draw your main focus. Whereas the punctual of the white as well as the purples he's used to stand out, especially that bright orange as Sarah's been referring to. And then he wraps it up nicely with some really, really nice smaller touches. So you'll see that his title isn't all one size. It's actually boxed and framed to call out the bits that he wants to focus on, and he's added in a nice wheel just to reference back to that this viz is on cars. So for me, there's some really nice design elements that might slip the net when most people look at it, but it's the first thing I notice when I look at the viz. There's
some really subtle design things, like as you called out, like the title, for instance. It's subtle, but it's effective, and yeah, it's really you're right. The coloring of the text as well is really nice. I'm going to go to the next view now, unless you've got anything else.
No, let's flick over.
Yeah.
You can
two dashboards for the price of one. Yeah. On this one, I mean, again, you've got that kind of grid-like layout you mentioned, CJ, which is nice. And what I really appreciate about this view is that everything is explained. You've got this running commentary, which really helps with storytelling. The one thing I was going to suggest, and again, it's really minor, it's not a design thing, but on these two charts over here, so the annual cost by driving record and the annual cost by credit score, I was thinking that, when we're looking at these charts, typically you would compare, let's take the top one, you'd compare a clean record versus any of these kind of negative things you could have that are going to bump up the cost of your insurance. So I was thinking that rather than showing it as a bar chart, perhaps you could show the cost of insurance for each of these kind of negative things, like driving record associated things, relative to the cost for a clean record. So you could see the difference and how much each of those things would bump up the cost. Same for the one below, so the credit score. So you could maybe compare it against the average and see how your credit score would impact the cost of insurance versus the average credit score.
Yeah, and the wording around it is really nice. I don't know where you sit with the use of the same colours on multiple charts, meaning different dimensions. I kind of go back and forth, because from a design perspective, you know, the use of purple and yellow throughout is really nice, but then sometimes people can perhaps get a little bit confused that am I highlighting, you know, the age in one, but also then driving record costs and credit score in another using the same color palette.
Yeah.
Something to be wary of. I think he's done nicely. Again, a little small design tip. He's added in a circle just to frame the edge of that right-hand section to split out the parts. And I think that makes you understand that, yeah, that's the one, to make you understand that these are different sections and should be interpreted like that. But yeah, my concern with the colours do play a part. One thing I did want to call out that's quite nicely done that you see in quite a chunk of vizzes is the colour encoding on the average, I think it's above and below average insurance cost on the far left chart, the rounded bars.
Yeah.
Blue and then the grey to highlight
these ones, yeah.
below. On the flip side, the negative part of the chart, I guess, is where you've added the circle in, Chimdi, for the roundedness of the bar, and you've added in an average line, which makes sense because you want to highlight the above and below the average. I'm pretty sure you have your 1,430 go over the average line because of the circle. Is that right? Have I interpreted that correctly? Because of the circle of the line. So that's 1,430.
Yeah, you have, yeah, because it's because of that rounding. That's the limitation of rounded bars, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you got to ditch the average line here, or you've got to ditch the roundedness. In my eyes, anyway.
Yeah, it's interesting that now you called it out that with that, I would almost call them like the alert kind of circles, because if I was doing this, and I'm not saying I would do it the right way, there's any right or wrong way, but I would probably have shaded the bars that were above average and not used an additional kind of visual encoding kind of technique there. But what Chimdi's done is shaded the top bar and then added that additional like alert but circle.
Yeah, I guess he
but either one is, I mean, everyone's works. It's just interesting.
Yeah. Don't let that detract away from how beautifully laid out this visualization is and how much respect I have for Chimdi as a designer, because he really does do some great stuff. So Chimdi, if you listen to this, which I'm pretty sure you will, hit me up, let's do a collab.
After Iron Viz. Like,
yeah, true.
Don't be signing up for anything now.
Yeah. Do a collab in 6 months.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, great job, Chimdi. So next up we have a viz by DataKo. And if you're not familiar with DataKo, she often does live vizzing on Twitch, which is pretty cool.
Oh,
so I think this was another one that was produced live, which I think is really exciting. I couldn't find the original for this, but I think this is some data that she's been vizzing like for a while. At least it's quantified self data, so she's keeping track of it for some time. So this is looking at her spending habits filling up her car. So looking at how much was spent, how often she filled up, and then the price of gas or petrol, diesel, whatever, depending on where you're from, over time, and also how that changed when she purchased a new car as well. So first off, I'd say I like the fact that there's some additional like kind of storytelling in here. So there's a note here to say that they obviously the pandemic hit and they started working from home more and driving less, which explains why their spending kind of dropped off over that time period, which I thought was really interesting. And I found it fascinating looking at the prices over time as well, because I think we all know right now we're all faced with, you know, much higher fuel costs, at least in the UK. They've kind of at record highs. So I thought that was quite interesting looking at the cost over time. So while she hasn't specifically tracked the cost of fuel, she's tracked it through just her purchases, which I thought was quite interesting. Yeah, what your thoughts were, TJ.
Nice to do some comparisons. What are my thoughts? I think it's lovely to welcome a new member to the community. I've followed you now on Tableau Public and really excited to see new things that you produce. Well done on the cool pop-out info button. If we could just click it.
Yeah.
Packed full of details. If I was thinking about this in terms of perhaps the Iron Viz 3 points of marking, maybe it's worth having this story actually on the visualization itself rather than tucked away in the info bar. And rightly, you've put it at the top, so people probably click it straight away. But I'd quite like some of this context on the page, just so I know setting the scene, what's happening, and a bit more information around what's to come in the charts itself. I think it's really cool that you build vizzes on Twitch. I don't know many people that do that, so I'll definitely check that out. And great that you put in social medias with a pop of color in the info button. That's great. If we look at the charts themselves, it's fairly non-standard to put the petrol icons over the bar graph, but I think there's quite a nice thought behind it, that it's like refilling your tank after however many journeys, and I quite like the alignment between each of them. What would be a really nice thing to do here is remove some of those grid lines, and maybe format some of the dates just to take away some of that harshness in the grids and that white coming through, because I see you've got a darker background. Another small touch I would consider doing is those season colorings look different to the bar chart, and that's presumably where you've increased the opacity of your bars. To get them to match, you could either drag seasons into a row field on a new sheet and reduce the opacity and bring that in as a sheet, that color legend, or re-increase the brightness on your bars themselves. Up to you, but it'd be nice if those colors matched a little bit stronger.
Yeah, that confused me for a while, because I wasn't sure where I was supposed to be comparing these colors to. Is it the bars above, or were these kind of shaded and my eyes have gone funny or something? What I was thinking was, like, it's definitely an interesting approach to show those, like each time you filled up on top of the bars. I don't think I've ever seen anyone do that before, which is cool. I was thinking, so if we took those off and maybe did a slightly separate view, then the reason I'm saying that is because I think what we're trying to show here, I think, is seasonality. So you've got the seasons in different colors, but shown in this view, it's quite difficult to compare like each winter to another winter. And so I was thinking maybe if you showed, if you layered the charts on top of each other, so maybe you did a line chart for every year and then layered them on top, so you had January through to December, and then had a line for each year, you'd see your spending over time, and you'd be able to tell one, like seasonality, like which time of year are you spending or filling up the most, and also which kind of your overall trends as well. So I thought that could be an interesting approach to this.
Absolutely. If we scroll a little bit further down and take a look at the bottom section. Nice. I think it's fantastic, the use of annotations, calling out certain areas that you think are important. So well done on that. Just a general comment overall, which will come with more visiting in general, is breathing space and white space. We talk a lot. So what does that mean? At the moment, your graph touches the very edge of the right hand side and the bottom of the page. But if we added in, say, 20 pixels at the bottom and to the right, it would make those graphs feel less overwhelming on the page. And what you'll see is, because of the background choice you've used with the road, you've got a lot of empty left-hand space there, which understandably you might not want to utilize a graph over the top of it to cover that check marks up. But you need to mirror that within the gap in the right-hand side, either with just a black background extending.
Yeah. I'd say take some inspiration from someone like Chimdi we just looked at, where he had that perfect border going around the edge and lots of white space. And another thing you could consider, and this will help with the white space as well, is actually maybe breaking each chart down into its own section and giving it a title. So like we can see here that it's pretty obvious to interpret that you've got a new car, which is great. But maybe just call that out and just add some additional text and context around that. So maybe, why did you get a new car, and what have you found with, like, in terms of like filling it up with fuel? Is it, you know, we can see here we've got the miles per gallon, which is interesting, and actually getting less, I think. It's like, oh no, slightly more, sorry, I thought it was 32 with your new car, but it could be good just to write a couple of sentences around that and explain what's going on with the data.
Absolutely. I'm
Yeah.
sure you could form behind it.
Okay, great job. Let's move on. I think we're going really slow today. All right, so next up we have a viz by Dennis, and this one is on anti-Asian hate in the US. So this is Dennis's original viz, which was done last year, I believe. Yeah, so about a year ago, so March 2021. And then what Dennis has done is actually he's updated the data set and then produced a completely different viz for this year with the latest data as well. So now we have data for both 2020 and 21 to show, you know, how I think it's from a survey. Oh no, sorry, it's a Stop AAPI hate data collected from 11,000 reports of hate incidents. So yeah, you obviously used a radar chart this time, so it's a completely different look and feel to the original viz. But I really like the colors that particularly that Dennis has used here. I think they just work together really well, and I like the amount of white spaces included around the radar chart.
Yeah, this one got a really warm reception on Twitter, I saw. Well done, Dennis, for making such an impactful viz about a really strong topic. It's good that you revisited it a year later to show the importance. Really like the design element of having a picture in the background. I don't think people will notice it straight away because of your use of the opacity, really making that light so that you can read it if you focus on the banner that the person's holding up. But those bright colours that you've used in the chart itself really come to the forefront. So really like that use of design skills there. Yeah,
Dennis does that in a lot of his work, actually, I think. So in his Iron Viz entry was on graffiti in LA. Distinctly remember it because I love graffiti and all that kind of stuff.
Did the tennis one as well, didn't he?
The tennis one, then it was Michael Chang, is that right?
Yeah, I have no idea. It's definitely Michael someone.
I think it was Michael Chang. So he did, and that had the image where he had layered kind of charts on top as well.
Yeah, the use of colour here, could you kind of explain it to me? I was clicking through the topics and I wasn't too sure how the colour related to the radar itself, and I think I was just having a bit of a moment.
So I have struggled with this viz, and I was looking at it earlier and I was trying to interpret what was going on. I think the colours relate to the year, I think. So I think, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I'm probably completely wrong. Let's
have a little click through and
let's look at the age group. So we only have one colour for this one.
Yeah, so I think most of them only have one colour. The first few are red and the bottom few are blue.
Okay, let me go to places. Right, it's clearly not year, unless this is new data. But
so So that confused me a little bit, and perhaps still does. So Dennis, do let me know.
Well, yeah, maybe I don't want to try and guess because I'll probably get it wrong.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on from the use of colour, I think the narrative section, if you go and click onto one of those drop downs there, I think this really brings this to life. There's something so impactful from a comment and the emotional thoughts it brings with it. And I like that it's in that. Is it italic? Yeah, it looks italic. It looks like a comment, kind of feedback comment. So I really like that, and it really aids the visualization.
Yeah, this is really nice. It really, as you say, it like humifies like the data, right? It makes you know, it's a reminder that there are people behind these numbers, and they are having a not so great experience, right? But yeah, no, great work, Dennis. I think it's really great how you reimagine this in a completely different way. And I think that the radar chart, works nicely. Yeah. Okay. Next up, we have Eliza. So this is Eliza's original viz, and I think this is the one. Like, I had a look through your public portfolio. This is the one with the most similar title. So this is the original. So it's a prospect overview. And this was done in September 21. And then if I go to the new one, we have a much cleaner, different view in the latest viz. Do you have any initial thoughts, CJ?
I like the fact that Eliza hasn't changed, I don't think, any of her chart types. So it makes for a great direct comparison. So what we'll notice if you wouldn't mind keep flicking between them as I talk, you'll see that this has a chunk of green. Is the green perhaps relevant? Not so much. So when we go back to the new one, we've got the orange, which links a lot nicer into that logo in the top right. You also see that things aren't necessarily boxed together anymore. And I think that use of the white background and how things have now been laid out on the page has a much cleaner look to it. You also see that Eliza's made a lot of the text grey, and I think that works well here because the harshness of the black in a viz can kind of detract away from the charts, and the grey really softens the viz, and again kind of ties into the logo in the top right.
Yeah, right. I do like how those colours come together, and as a result, there really aren't many colours in use here, right? What I like about the new version is that she's tucked all of the details away into this show details button, rather than the original, which has the kind of everything all like on one page. I think just makes it much easier to consume, so you can look at your charts, make some selections, and then go and view the details related to them, rather than just presenting everyone with everything.
Interesting you say that. I was in two minds, because if we scroll down, if you click the show details, fantastic. It fills the rest of the visualization out. I felt slightly like there needs to be a chart behind the show hide button still, because when we hide the table, and yeah, you're right, there's less elements to consume, but there's a lot of white space at the bottom that I felt like an extra chart or some sort of commentary would be needed to fill that white gap at the very bottom.
Do you know what I would probably do? I would probably have that show hide container on top of the main viz, so maybe covering up the map and these lower charts.
Oh, then trim it.
So then not have that blank space at the bottom. So you'd almost like flip the views depending on if you wanted to look at the details or the map. So I don't know how many people would use the, typically you'd kind of make your selections with the visualizations before looking at the details, right? I don't think many people would be cross-referencing the details and the charts. I might be wrong.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Other than that, I didn't have too many other comments, but I did like the fact that they utilize the same charts and focus more on the design aspects and maybe some of the functionality as opposed to redesigning every single element of the visualization.
Yeah, one other thing I appreciate with this Viz is that every interactive element is described, and she's telling the audience exactly what they should do. So if we take it, the Viz at the top, capacity rating, we've got a note here, click to filter, and you have that against all of the bar charts. And you've also on this drop down here, the title is select an officer. And I think so often people stick with the default, so it might just be officer or officers without a kind of action on what you should do. So I really appreciate the fact that these have been updated.
Very cool. Moment of truth. Is the map thing turned off?
No. The other countries are hidden. Oh no, we can keep going.
Broken it. So, yeah, okay. I think it catches everyone else on maps. Turn it off at both dashboard and worksheet level.
Yeah, it's tricky. They don't make it easy. One other thing while we're talking about the map actually is on this original, every single state is labeled. I think that it's a little bit overwhelming. So I do appreciate the fact that on this one, I think it's just the max and min that've got labels on them. Yeah,
for sure, much cleaner.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well done, Eliza. Next up, we have Ervin, and this is a Viz on Star Wars. I'll say right now, I know nothing about Star Wars, so if there's anything that's kind of in here that I'm supposed to pick up on, I probably won't, so I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're going to struggle through this because I don't know anything about Star Wars.
So this is the original. This is done in May 2021. I know that these things have got a name. The name beats me right now.
I have no idea, sorry.
So yeah, we've got just a scatter plot looking at the nominations for these different Star Wars movies at, I think in general, just the number of nominations they had and compared to the number of wins they actually got. And then with the new Viz, it's completely different.
Fantastic, the new one.
Yeah. So it's Ervin is another person who has quite a unique style. I think he's got a quite distinctive style, should I say. So like his Iron Viz entry is reminiscent of this Viz as well. I think it's pretty cool. So we have a nice, clear how to read section at the top here around, you know, how to read the charts below. And then we have, it's almost like a small multiple chart looking at the different movies and the awards that they actually won and were nominated for, I think.
Yeah, fantastic. It reminds me that bottom section a little bit of the ice hockey Viz Jared did, and then
yeah,
the small multiple work that Priya has done as well.
Yeah, it reminds me of a lot of the Vizes actually we looked at during the sports round.
Yeah,
and that one in particular, the ice hockey one, where he had the like the pictures of the different awards in each like puck.
Yeah, for sure. Did you say these are less than a year apart, these two Vizes?
Yes, this previous one was May, so it's amazing.
Incredible to see the difference in design and those strong design elements coming through. I think, like, what a year to be able to produce something of this standard and layout. Now, if I was a Star Wars fan, which I'm obviously not, but I would buy this as a print. I think it's a beautiful poster with very little words, but you can still see the main message of the awards for each year and each release, and I think it's beautifully laid out, especially that top section. I'm presuming that's kind of in the layout of people are going to hate me, like the credit rolls.
I was going to say that the credits at the beginning of Star Wars. So,
yeah. vaguely associate the two. So I think that's really nice, and the use of the same typography of the logo and that framing of a Star Wars story.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah. Another thing I appreciate with this one is that each of the icons are consistent, so they're all filled icons, and pretty much I think sometimes you get people using like a combination of outline and filled, and it just looks a little bit messy. But here they're all consistent and work together nicely.
You're going to hate me. I've in my notes I've got make your iconography from group. So if you scroll to the very bottom,
oh no,
the one slip up is I think that you should consider using all block or all circular within the end bit.
Tableau.
The Tableau, the LinkedIn, the iconography so good throughout the whole viz, and then you scroll to the bottom with your links, and I think if you just tweak those, it's the icing on the cake. So yes, I agree with the iconography and the shapes in the actual viz. I think they're really nicely done, and kudos to you for that.
Yeah, no, great job. Okay, all right, next up we have Jessica, and this is her original. So this is looking at the number of people who had never married, and I think this was a Make of a Monday. This one was done in June 2021. So we've just got like a simple like bar chart breakdown looking at the never married percentage by age and gender. And then the new one, she did a really fun take on this. I think she actually published this on Pi Day. So we have a lot of pie charts in this viz, but I thought the bouquet in particular was really, really creative. So that was really nice. And then we have loads of pie charts going on here, shown in different ways.
Yeah, I noticed the bouquet style pie charts. I don't know how many pie charts are on this viz, but I think it definitely is the most I've ever seen. Crazy. I think there is a technical element. Let's disregard how people feel about pie charts for the moment, but I think there's quite a nice technical build within that bouquet where you have different layers. One of them is leaves. So you
can see the leaves you hover over, like here.
So I think I haven't downloaded the workbook to check myself, but you have the leaves as a layer, then the pie chart, so then you'll have maybe the labels either on the same layer as the pie chart, so then the jewels / donut / middle of the flower, I'm going to say, is a shape file as well, it looks like. So there's actually some nice layering to the visualization.
Yeah, totally. I like the fact that Jessica's clearly had fun putting this together. I did struggle to read it. I looked at it when it was first published, and I was struggling a little bit with just reading some of these pies. Let me just try and see. Well, I don't know if you've been able to interpret it.
I think it is a fun viz. I think not necessarily the use of the pie chart will be the right chart in every instance here, for sure. And it is in my notes that, if this was taken down a different route, perhaps different chart styles might be more appropriate for the story you're trying to tell. So when you look at the text on each different section, we keep scrolling through. Each of the text on the different sections, are these actually being called out using the pie chart? And if not, what could be an appropriate alternative? Where does the pie chart sit well? I'll let others be the decider of that, but I think one thing Jessica has done, which we could all apply to our own work, is the use of different versions of encoding. And you see that she's used a pie chart, but within a scatter plot or within a slope graph. So it's something that people should experiment using different types of encoding, see what works, see what doesn't, and I think it's nice that she's applied it to something that in kind of a nice, fun, jovial way.
Yeah, there's a couple of things as well I appreciated with this one is that she has labeled every pie chart. So even if you're struggling with them, you've got those labels there. So it's clear the percentage that have never married for each gender. And then another thing she did was with these kind of like barbell kind of axes, she labeled the genders on the top one, but then didn't repeat that labeling going down, which I think was nice. So you don't get that kind of repetitive labeling that so often you see in some vizzes. Yeah, I think, it's a fun viz. I like how she's framed it at the bottom here with some additional pies. I think that rounds it off nicely. And then the quotes as well.
Very good, very good.
Yeah, great work. Okay, next up we have Michelle Frayman. So I'm going to go to Michelle's original viz to begin with. So this was another quantified self viz looking at Michelle's personal triathlon data relating to the Nantucket sprint triathlon she competed in 2018. So I'm going to go through this viz. So I'll just scroll through it first and then we'll go to the new one. So I know one thing you mentioned, CJ, was that she'd used the same charts in both vizzes, right? So we look at the first one, we've got this kind of like unit chart grid, the map, and then if we go
really
to
nice elements in that first viz.
Yeah, I mean, it's by no means a bad viz. There's a lot in there as well. And then this is the updated version. So I didn't actually check. I did this. This is 2019. Okay, and then this is the new one. So you can see there are some similar elements coming through. But then she's a lot of new design elements as well, just different approaches. So yeah, there's a lot to this viz. I absolutely love it. I think it's great.
I think incredible stats as well, to be honest. Wanting to just be able to do this, to be able to do a triathlon is incredible, and to be able to then log all your details and visualize it in a really compelling way is another thing. So I'm doubly impressed looking through it. I was impressed with the original, and I'm even more so impressed with this one. And there's a few things that stood out to me as to what Michelle's done that I thought were really nice takeaways. The first is, if we flick between the two, is the increase in title size. I'm gonna just kind of go through chronologically the differences. The increase in title size is really nice. The alignment of the text and splitting it out into the different sections. You'll see that we've got now 3 blocks of text, which is easier as a reader to digest rather than a full paragraph, but also the alignment between the text and those 3 coloured logos. And what you also notice is Michelle's changed the colour palette, not in terms of the colours used, but the logo colours.
Just the cyclist though, isn't it? Oh no, she's okay. No, you're right. Yeah.
So she's used the grey in other ways later on, but the direct focus is the 3 parts that make up the triathlon. So I think that's a really nice touch, especially because grey and blues, I don't know about you, but for me it can tend to be similar. So to have them split out as now a red and a blue, I think that was great. Yeah,
Michelle always does a good job of giving each section a title and that kind of breaking things out into sections. And I think in almost all of Michelle's vizzes, she always has bands as well. This very Michelle style, and I think that works well. I did really like this section here, looking at breaking it down by different training workout types. There is a really consistent use of color throughout this viz, I would say.
Sorry.
No, carry on.
This is the equivalent of the line chart in the other viz, right? So where she had previously, I think it replaces this one.
Yeah.
What we see in this viz here is multiple lines. It might be quite hard to digest, but by splitting out her new viz and framing stuff in a different way, you can easily associate through the color encoding all the different aspects. So I think it's a lot cleaner like this and easier to interpret too. So really good stuff in that section.
And it's great that she's actually explained the data as well. So, like for instance, son broke his wrist. But then that's why she there's a drop here, but she still went for a run on the race day, just commitment. And then you've got other kind of peaks kind of explained in there as well, which I thought was really nice.
Yeah, really cool. And you see Michelle's made that calendar a little bit slimmer down the side to be able to put other things in. I think the calendar is amazing. I kind of want to build one myself now, but you'll see that even by taking up less space, it still has the same impact, I would say. Yeah,
and she's actually done it in different. She's made it more calendar-like, if in my opinion. Like these, she's got the on the new version, she's got it looks more like a calendar. You've got the dates on each tile, whereas in the original, it's just really a grid with the days of the week across the top.
Yeah, so true. I hadn't actually noticed that.
But yeah, you're right. Making that smaller just makes so much more space for other things. And it's nice. You've got this narrative going through. It feels like Michelle is kind of like reading it to you almost. In the way that it's written, it's very personal.
Again, splitting things out by workouts and using color effectively in these two charts. It's great. I didn't have too many considerations for things I would change. There is one thing. If we scroll up to the top, and this might be me misinterpreting things. Pause here, down a little bit. This line chart going straight across the page. The good thing. No, the one above it, sorry. The bands, right. The really nice thing is Michelle's actually subbed out some of her bands to focus on the comparative views of performance over the different years, where I think previously it was just a year-on-year band. But there's actually a lot of impact within here. So we've got the bands there. And I think that's a year-on-year or a change in year. But in the new one, we've got each of the different years split out and the race time comparison, which I think is really nice. My only concern with this, and I don't know if I'm misinterpreting it, is you have the swim. I think maybe that logo in 2018 is incorrect. Unsure.
This one?
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway,
I think she took this. Something's telling me that she took the swimming out.
Oh, okay. That's
maybe I don't know.
My thought is within it is. If we just scroll back,
I'm just trying to check.
We have 20 minutes and then 45 minutes, let's say, for the run, and then the bike is at the hour mark, and that chunk of time is at the event by sport kind of level, whereas the end, I'm presuming that's the cumulative time of the whole thing. So in my mind, that's two separate markers, and there needs to be some sort of context between the 63-minute and the flame, because otherwise people might misinterpret it. That end section is the bike, but whereas is the red person running not meant to be 43 minutes after the 20-minute swim?
That's how I would have interpreted it. Yeah, that's why I was a little bit confused, because the 2018, it looks like the bike and the runner are very close together, but yet the times aren't much different.
So for this, understandably, you want to compare across the time of each discipline. So whether you're cycling or running or swimming, so it makes sense that Michelle hasn't done it 20 plus 40 plus 50. But then the end time makes it almost confusing, and whether I would almost consider having those end times separate somehow, because it's almost like you've merged two different measures into one full line.
Well, I think as much as I like the icons, you almost need like a stacked bar or something like that, where you can see the duration for each activity, and then the bar length would be the overall duration, right?
Yeah.
You've confused me now, because I missed that this person was in yellow, and I'm like, what's going on?
That I haven't noticed. Let's brush over the yellow man. I think that might be a...
That's Michelle. It's not a man. Like,
oh, sorry.
Yeah.
It's yellow person.
But yeah, no. The one other thing I wanted to say as well, and this is like a really minor point, but I'm not sure like what's driving the order of these bar charts, but I'd probably align them so bike would match bike down here. I'm not quite sure why the order's different between the two charts, but I've just align them better.
Good spot.
Great job.
I think Michelle used the same colours in Iron Viz, right?
Similar. Yeah. Well, she was red, mainly red, I think. Iron Viz. Yeah, but this reminds me a little bit of our Iron Viz entry. I think that's just her overall style. All right, next up we have a viz by Pradeep. So Pradeep actually did a makeover of one of the Tableau Accelerator vizzes. So this is the original, and this wasn't by Pradeep. This is by Tableau themselves. And so that's business dashboard looking at web traffic performance. And then this is his new viz, and I'm going to struggle to offer anything critique wise on this one, so I think it's really impressive. So this is the reimagination of that viz. Yeah, I think this is so many nice elements to this viz. Got a lot of great feedback on social media as well.
Rightly so. And Pradeep is another one that you should go to for design inspiration. Fantastic stuff. And I've actually shown this internally. I'm so impressed by this business dashboard. I've shown it to a few folks to engage with that kind of creative design elements and thinking what's out there. As you click through, I want to do similar to what we did with Chimdi's, and I just point out a few design things that I really like about this.
Yeah, do you want me to go back to the cockpit?
Yeah, please. Yeah. So as you click those, see how that highlighter in the background of that filter bar and that small line just showing you which section or dashboard view you're looking at changes. Yeah,
that's really nice.
Slither down the side. Stuff like that's really nice. I like I'm going to call it a fintechy kind of website feel to it, with the waving icon at the top, and the username login at the far right corner.
With the notifications as well.
Really nice.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, the alerts is fantastic.
Page views, page time load. That's great.
Again, iconography is really clean within this. What else do we have? We have some nice grayed out elements on the left, not to detract you from the visualization. And again, Pradeep's used consistent but a variety in font sizes and colors to highlight things that are important to engage with. So really nicely designed.
Yeah, I mean, we could probably talk about this viz for a very long time. but I'd encourage anyone who's listening like to check it out and download it and try and have a look at how some of these things were achieved.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
I got Pradeep actually was the first person to submit a viz for this round. I think he'd happened to have done this anyway. And when I announced it for IronQuest, he's like, I'm going to submit because it was perfect for the topic. So yeah, great job. Keep them coming, Pradeep. We love your vizzes. All right, next up we have Saverio, and this one is looking at racial inequality in HR. So this is the original, which was done in January 21. I think this was for diversity in data, I have a feeling. And then this is the new one. And I think he's another person who's that kind of managed to kind of carve out his own style.
Mm.
A lot of his viz are very distinctive, which is great. So completely different approach with this one, actually. So you went from the dendrogram to the waffle charts.
Yeah, it's, long form now.
Yeah.
As you said, he's very consistent with his design principles. He loves a black background.
Mm-hmm.
I do wonder if that ever plays into his vizzes or not. I'd like to see him expand into different colours. Maybe if he's listening, then you can take that as a challenge to try.
I'm gonna have a look if he's ever done one. There you go. There's another colour.
Got a grey. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lovely portfolio to look through, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really nice. Yeah. But it's interesting how much his style's changed, right, in that short period of time. You know, this is completely different to this one.
For sure.
Go on. I was just going to say, I like how much white space there is in this viz, and I think it's a really effective use of color. So we've only got the white and the pink, really, and the grey, but that the pink is really stark against the dark background, and it works really well. To be honest, I don't think there's much I would change. Maybe I'd make the percentages a little bit bigger, but I mean, that's a really minor point.
Yeah, for sure. And the use of those other boxes being grayed out to a similar shade or a dark shade, almost black, helps push that into the background, and the brightness of the pink comes to the forefront. I don't really have too much to add on this. Yeah, good spacing. I did consider as to what order he chose to put the different grids in. I didn't see anything that stuck out to me as to why those was the order, but it might be random.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So scroll through the page as opposed to having them sorted on highest to lowest, where you're ending up your viz at the bottom and you're like, oh, so this doesn't impact much. So I'd like to see if there was any choice given to the ordering, but nice.
Yeah. One thing I would say, if we're thinking about Iron Viz, is just adding more narrative around some of these things. So that, we're purely presenting data here. There's not really much in the way of storytelling. So thinking about what narrative you could add around this, like here we've got only 8% of ethnic minorities have reported no racism in their place of work, which is obviously quite stark. And while that number's low, that means that 92% have, right? It's just like thinking about how you flip that. So interesting just to add some narrative perhaps around this, and maybe again at like a call to action at the bottom would be good.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yeah. Okay. Next up we have Simon Rowe. So Sports Biz Sunday buddy there. And it's not a sports viz, which is incredible. So this is Simon's original viz, which is actually for IronQuest. So this was the collaboration I did with Lindsay Betzendahl when we looked at healthcare in prisons. So this is Simon's original. We've got a long form viz here, and then it's looking at survey data, how people's health is in prison. I think it's focusing on women, I want to say. Maybe not. I think I did women, but this focuses on everyone. And then this is the updated version. So I really like the fact that he's kept the same font style. That was cool. But you see that with the new version, it's kind of broken down into these different sections, which I think is really nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Very prison-esque, that font style, and you can definitely tell Simon's got a new job role because of the way things are laid out.
It's very much like where he works. Yeah.
Yeah, the use of the red in the call out in the title with the
I love that
line. Small things like that. Some really good, I guess, data principles applied well.
Absolutely.
I think the framing of each section, like you called out, is a really nice touch. It almost makes you break it into the 3 or 4 different questions, whereas, not to say that other one didn't, but this one really frames them nicely, and you know when one section is starting and ending, and the charts are relating to that question directly.
No, absolutely. I think I was looking at the old one that, you know, it could maybe have done with like more like space in between the sections, but with this new version, you don't have that problem anymore. I like how we have these hamburger menus, which just provided like additional context on each thing that's been shown.
For sure. Yeah, it takes a lot of the words away from the chart so that you can focus on the chart, but still keep some of the context in there. Also, a nice touch is that it has that handcuffs. But he also has that at the very top. So what we'll see is, I'm presuming what Simon's considered here is people will have scrolled down from the very top, forgotten by the time they reach the bottom what the handcuffs signal. So he's kind of re-highlighted it there.
Yeah, that's nice.
It's a good call out.
Yeah, absolutely.
From myself, Simon, if I was to make 2 suggestions, they're very minor. One would be consideration to aligning some of those pop-outs and click action call-outs. I think maybe they'd look nice all with handcuffs all right aligned, or they feel a little bit scattered. Again, those burger charts and what is prison health, like those burger pop-outs, if they could be aligned with the one just underneath it as well. It keeps going there.
This one here. Yeah.
I'll leave that one out. Minor, but it's something I noticed. And then you got to big yourself up more in the footer. You got to make sure that font's slightly bigger.
Yeah.
If you see any of my vizzes, it's probably it's probably bigger than the font on the actual dashboard. I would increase the size of that and really promote your work.
Yeah, I think that's a little bit blurry as well. I think it's probably a Figma background or something with that text on it. But yeah, I agree. The one thing I want to call out, not as a negative but as a positive, and it's something that Cole Knaflick does a lot of, and I know she's quite passionate about this, and so it's no surprise that Simon's done it as well, but is the placement of the axes labels. So you see here the year axes label is like right at the beginning of that axes, and then he's added the percentage of prisoners at the top. And I just think it's a lot nicer, it's a lot cleaner than putting it right in the middle as default Tableau does. Unfortunately, there's no easy way of changing that in Tableau. Like you have to maybe hover a text box over it or something, but it's just a really nice design touch that I noticed in this viz.
I was going to say, I wonder if there's a way to realign axes titles on a chart.
There's not. I've had this conversation with Cole actually. There's not currently. I think it's on the ideas forum. So if We can dig it out and give it some upvotes, but it would be nice if you could, sure. But yeah, great job. Okay, we've got 2 more. So this one is by Sum. I tracked down the original. So the original wasn't by them, but it was inspired by something that they saw on this site. So I'm going to scroll down to the one.
Okay.
It was inspired by this pictogram. I think it was this one. Yeah, this one. Sorry, CJ, wasn't the sports one. This one, it's looking at the HuffPost and the number of articles they did by category. So the types of like news. So this was the original, and then this is the version in Tableau. I think this is their first ever Viz. So thank you for choosing IronQuest for your first Viz. I think that's awesome. So instead of having it in that pictogram style, they've taken the approach of doing a tree map, and then done some additional analysis on this data as well. And I think we can go through and have a look at the articles here too, which is pretty cool.
Very cool. Yeah, I want to chime in and say welcome to the community. Publishing your first visualization is sometimes a scary thing to do, but I'm glad you've done that, and of course chosen IronQuest. Maybe the next one you'll choose is Sports Fizz Sunday. Who knows? Do let me know if you want any tips and tricks. I think it's lovely that you've taken inspiration from an external website. I couldn't quite figure out the link, so thanks Sarah for tying that into a little bit further down on the website. I did see in that second view that it looked fairly similar to the very top of the website page, just in terms of tabular content. And I think this table is really clean. I think it should be really pleased with the formatting of this, also the ability to pop out a website to the side. I think that's a really cool touch, especially for a first Viz. Yeah,
that's really cool. I think, you know, we are looking at part to whole relationship here, so it's good that the tree map is a good choice for that kind of thing. And it makes it, I think it's probably easier to read than the original like pictogram, where we can clearly see here that the leading, like most common topic was politics. One thing I would do is probably try and tie these 2 charts together a little bit more. So we have the top one looking at leading topics of 2018, and then the bottom one is looking at 2012. I don't know if this is the same data set, but it would be nice if when you clicked on a topic up here that it filtered the words related to the headlines of those topics. But I don't know if they're related or not, if that would be possible.
Yeah,
that could be a nice touch.
Yeah, it definitely would. I think that'd be really interesting to be able to see what words are associated with each of these different topics, and even the sentiment around the topics. I did notice that we have the year on the side that you can click through and play the different words and trees. I kind of had in the back of my mind, I wonder if a line or a rank chart might be a nice way, because you can see that they're not necessarily the same topics leading each year. So there might be an alternative that they could perhaps look at.
Yeah, I think it's probably an interesting story here, because you've seen that if you look through, it's like the rise of politics. Because if you go right back to the beginning, they started off by looking at topics like wellness and style and beauty, and now it's like politics. It's just like taking all the fun out of the headlines. But that might be an interesting story to explore. So if you wanted to look at this data a little bit more, maybe you could do some more analysis and charts exploring that as an example.
Amazing, good stuff.
Yeah, great job, and thank you for entering. And then the final one we have is by Young. I couldn't find an original for this, so I don't know if there is one, Young, but we'll talk about the new one anyway. So Young just completed a PhD in, I want to say, microbiology. So a lot of his vizzes focus on microbiology, which is awesome. That a lot of them, I always say, they remind me of something you'd see in either a textbook or up on the wall in like a science lab, which is really cool. So this viz looks at an experiment. You can, I think I want to call it an experiment, but you can actually have a look at how you could use a plastic bottle to create a microbiological world. And like the steps you would need to do that, as described over here, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, I'm not even going to have a go at pronunciating some of the pronouncing some of the words on the page. I have no idea about science. I'm glad one of us does, and I don't know. I'm just making it sound like I know. I did also look through Young's profile, and I gave it a follow because there's some really good stuff on there, quite the portfolio. So I was excited to have a little dig through. So this visualization is a little bit different to ones we tend to see. It's kind of gone down a infographic, light-hearted diagram and learning route, I think, which is nice to see. Young's done very well to have call-outs of information tucked away in tooltips here, which is a nice interactive way of learning. I can imagine these sorts of dashboards like being used in like a classroom to help others learn, and you click each different section to see what happens. If I was to give a thought, and it's not one to necessarily improve the visualization, I would love to see more stuff built in-house. So some of these shapes in the middle, you could perhaps bring those in a shape file, same with the shapes on the right. That way you can hover the shape directly as opposed to a number, and then be able to highlight the information that way. It just brings that extra level of interactivity, because I know that a lot of this is actually built outside of Tableau itself.
Yeah, you're right. So I think Young uses like a special like tool, I think it's science related, for these images. But yeah, that would be nice if they could be built or in Tableau themselves. Yeah, I just really appreciate, as you said, CJ, like how he's added interactive elements, and you know, rather than adding all the text on the page, you just hover over and get that information as you go. Yeah, I think it's really nice. It's really nice. It fits on one page as well. There's a lot of information here, but it's not overwhelming to look at. But yeah, great job. So that's it. That was the last viz. So thank you so much, CJ, for joining me today. I really do appreciate you coming on and us talking through these vizzes. It's always fun to do this kind of thing.
I appreciate being invited. What an honor. I think this is my second.
The honor's all mine. Like, I am talking to an Iron Viz finalist. So yeah. It's really exciting, but thank you, and thank you to everyone who entered. I'll just do a quick plug. We are running another Iron Quest round at the moment. It's going to run through to the end of April, so you've got an additional amount of time to take part. And this one is a collaboration with the Data Plus Music project and Sean Miller, and we're going to be looking at music first. So we're encouraging you to look at visualizing maybe the first concert you went to, the first CD or tape or LP or whatever it was that you bought, or even like your first music memory. So I'm excited to see what people come up with for that. But yeah, thank you for everyone for entering, and thank you, CJ, and we'll see you all soon.
Amazing. Take care.
Yeah, you too. Take care.